speaker present, Nick Koretsky from Russia, who is an English teacher with an MA university degree and over 20 years of experience. He has been teaching students from USA, China, European Union, Russia, Australia, South Korea. And he says that his top achievement is the development of an interactive grammar organizer cube. And today in his session, he will show us how to use this cube in practice and how it helps to boost students' level and help them pass IELTS. Nick, thank you for accepting the invitation. Now over to you.
Okay, do you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet, just a moment. I will try to, okay, share screen.
Share
yes,
screen,
I'm doing
entire screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Right now you have it, right?
Yes, loading. Yes. And you can go full screen.
Yeah, but I will have to switch because I will be sharing different links, etc. So this is it. The topics of today's session is teaching tenses with Grammar Cube, and also a little bit of a teaser, seeing the dog alive, which will be a little mystery by the end of this session, where I will try to reveal and you will understand what was this all about. Okay, let's go. So again, my name is Nick and I'm English language teacher. I'm also inventor of a 2 and 3D organizers for English verbal grammar. And I'm also developer of a special course, or I'd say technology, English language teaching technology, English in 3D. And today I'll tell and share how you can use my resources to achieve more on your grammar lessons by actually doing less. That's the goal. So first things first, when students come to me and say, okay, we don't speak English, we want to speak English well, my first question usually is define good speaking. Because we charge per hour, time is money. So the better English you want to achieve, the more money you will have to spend on that. And when students realize that this is actually talking about money, they start become more careful about what they wish for. And this is when I usually introduce the IELTS band scores, because it helps to define the goal. And I tell that modest user, well, speaking about like tourist language, starts from about IELTS 5.0, which is usually to achieve, you need to get to spend in class about 500 to 800 hours of your studies. This is the global standard. But with technology that I developed, and I tell that openly, you can achieve the same result within much less time, within about 100 hours, more or less, but about that time. And what we will be talking about is that how you can do, well, not pretty much the same, because 1 hour session is not enough to disclose all the details, but somehow you will get an understanding and the way of using those resources that I use to get closer to that result, to make life a little bit easier and your students a little bit happier. So let's go. Language is all about memory. And as any computer engineer knows, memory is like money. No matter how much you have, it's never enough. So working with the memory of our students, we have to be very, very careful of how we spend it, because it's very easy to deplete it for whatever we consider important. But after all, in the end of the day, students just don't process what we try to input. To model this situation, you can just open in your browser 100 pages with heavy traffic like YouTube or games or whatever. This is pretty much what our students have if we don't care about the level of the load of our students. So Rule number one, range your input and focus on the most important. What is the most important? In any language, a verb. The verb is a power core of any language, and its most complex and important part. And this is what I focus on from the very first lesson. And I tell my students that everything else will be next and then and after they master verbal grammar. And once we start focusing on that, we have this clearly problem of numerous verbal forms and tenses of English language. Tenses are like pieces of a big grammar puzzle. What may look like a nice picture of studying for a side viewer who doesn't understand what's going on actually. In fact, in most cases, a helpless effort of a desperate student trying to sort out a mess while being totally blind in a complete darkness. And this is not something which I invented. This is actually my personal experiences and memories of being a student from 25 years ago, or maybe 30 already, I don't remember. But I remember it so clearly that I still can memorize it pretty vividly. And this is what I tell my students. I remember what I was before. So the solution is pretty simple. Why waste students' time by feeding them with all sorts of puzzles when we can offer them an organizer, okay? An organizer with nicely arranged material, which is easy to learn and use and quickly to understand. So with this approach in mind, I built my first grammar organizer, which was not like organizer. I came with name later, but it was somehow like a set of interactive tables. And I will try to share with you right now this first. Okay, where is it? That's here. That's it. Do you see it on the chat?
No.
Try to have a look in the see in the chat.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, the link. Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I will continue sharing my screen, and you just open these interactive tables and play with them. I'm definitely sure you get the idea, and it worked. It worked pretty well, but after a while, it became clear that these simple tenses, from one hand, it's not enough. From the other hand, it's too complicated. So I built another one, which is like this one. Well, this is my working tool, as I say. It's not so fancy looking, and it definitely works only with the Chrome browser. Do not try to open it in anything else. Definitely doesn't work in Microsoft Explorer. Well, it's definitely works in only Chrome. Maybe some other, but I'm not sure about it. What it offers? Do you see my screen now? Colleagues. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. If we switch to this one, the third bottom, this one, you can see that this is the same set of tables, which is clickable, interactive, and you can use it in your lessons. And it also includes what was lacking in the previous table. It includes infinitives and modals. And modals have this, if you look here, a gray fallout menu with modal verbs, which you can also click and open. Generally, what I try to do in my lessons, I try to get my students into these tables as soon as possible. But of course, this may be a bit overwhelming if you are dealing with students at the beginner or maybe intermediate level. You need something more simple, and this is what I have here, the second button. This is what is built for these students, and particularly for this kind of students, I also built these buttons because this way you can switch off and focus students to what you want. So they are not focused to they do not spread the attention to what is not needed. They can just focus on what actually is in play. For example, present simple. And starting building these sentences, I also had a problem of building questions to object, to predicate, and to overcome this difficult grammar language, because it's always too much scary for our students. I came to this solution, which definitely works very well. I said, okay, what you have to learn from each language, from each lesson, is 3 simple sentences and square on the top and circle from the left. And when students hear square on the top and circle on the left, it doesn't scare a hell out of them. It sounds familiar, it doesn't overload their memory, and usually it works just fine, and they memorize 5 types of these sentences pretty easily, because nothing scares them from like grammar side. Of course, later you can tell them, okay guys, I somehow used you, and I used your trust, and I built it like different ways, but at the beginning it works fine. Just substitute it with simple lesson, with simple language. That's it. Okay, once you start getting used to that tables, you can start using them in practical teaching situations. And this is what we will start talking about right now. Color coding activity. This is usually a very useful activity for the beginners. What students actually do, they have to take 3 colors. You can do it online, you can do it offline, whatever you prefer. You can take 3 colors: yellow tenses, green infinitives, and blue modals. And you tell them, give them the task to color verbal parts of a sentence, which is also, believe me, my colleagues, full of discovery. The endeavor full of discovery, because all of a sudden you realize that being a professional with the decades in the field, we all have a professional deformation. We believe that the world as we see it is definitely seen by all other members of the society, which is not true. And when your students will start coloring those parts, you will see that their picture of the world is sometimes completely different from yours. And this exercise is particularly useful when you use it with interactive tables, like in the website that I told you, because when your student doesn't recognize this or that part, or recognizes it with a mistake, it doesn't help just to correct and say, okay, this is wrong. Usually what I do, I forward them to this table and say, okay, maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong, but prove it to me. Find me in this table the place which is related to this particular part of this text. And when the students start to understand this connection between this interactive theory and text practice, their level of grammar thinking goes to the next level. They start to understand this connection, and they start to treat it with more, as something more valuable. they start to understand that grammar isn't something that is invented to spoil their life, but rather a useful tool to help them to communicate to the outside world. Yes. Next, as soon as they colored these parts nicely, okay, we have went through all these mistakes. They recognize the parts. Now it's another level, which is another level of difficulty for them. You tell them, okay, now you recognize that Tom leaves is a present, a simple, active tense. Build me a question. So, for example, where does it? Of course, you interact with your student in your native language, and this way, you help them to go into the language more comfortably. But again, not just guess, but rather build it using those interactive tables. Make them find this table which is responsible for processing this particular algorithm. Again, it helps them to connect with theory more practical. As Albert Einstein said, there's nothing more practical than a good theory. And this is exactly what we're talking about. Again, when I told you that using those resources, you will be achieving more by doing less, I was not lying to you, because switching focus from teacher's personality to those interactive tables actually decreases your teaching burden and increases learning efficiency. You just send your students to this interactive grammar quest online. You do not waste your time explaining again and again in words what you have already explained 1,000 times and they didn't hear it anyway. But once they start actually diving into those interactive tables, and they are very familiar with that because it's a new generation, this is their world, it's natural for them, they just grow into that and start learning in just overdrive. You practically do nothing. You just channel them to where they need to go, and they click and find. And if they don't click and find, well, that's another level of difficulty, but let's not talk about it because that's another story. Okay. Generally, these interactive tables were a success, but still from some students and teachers, I had the complaints that, well, Nick, too many tables, too difficult. So what I had in mind, and I tried to redo, I used the old method of Lotzi, which is known from ancient times as method of Cicero. And I put all these interactive tables onto the surfaces of the cube. And this is how actually my grammar cube appeared. This is what it is, okay? I will try to stop share. I can do that. Just a moment. Oops, yeah. That's it. Okay, this is the link to the grammar cube. Don't be afraid, it takes a rather long time to upload because it is rather difficult. It's heavy in memory, but it's working like pretty much the same like 2D, but in 3D. Okay, just a moment. I will try to share my screen once again. Okay. So having it in 3D definitely has advantages because it's more natural for processing by human brain, because human brain from the nature is, well, it's not designed to process the abstract things. It's more designed to process natural things, and cube is an object of a natural world. So it's clickable, also clickable. You can play with it. It definitely has active and passive parts. You can click it and see. Many most of them, almost all students say, hey, what's those dinosaurs? And I say those dinosaurs are the tenses which became so big and heavy that they just extinct like dinosaurs. It's also a pretty wild idea which comes for the first time in students' mind that actually language is alive. It has its cycles of development, okay? But if you click on a dinosaur, you may hear how these dinosaurs are roaring, and it was kind of a fun just to let students know, okay, please, we have already extinct, don't touch us, we're already dead. Well, just a little fun, and it doesn't hurt to have it on the lesson. Okay, what next? Yes. If we talk about functions of the grammar cube, it's 3-in-1. It's a universal container of all verbal forms, like Swiss Army knife. It's working as a globe, a 3D organizer for learning material, and it's also working as a GPS, a high precision verbal grammar positioning system. And I invented this term mostly because it appeared as the result of working with this cube. And I invented it, and maybe someday I will write an article about it, but not quite ready yet. How does this verbal GPS work? It works pretty simple. Each grammar part, which is highlighted by its color code on the sentence, is related to its area on the cube. You see, present indefinite active has its cell, exactly like all other parts of the sentences. So each verbal part is related to its area on the cube, which is, if we logically extend it, leads us to the situation when each and every verbal part of a sentence directly relates to its individual respective part of a cube. And if we logically end that story, we have the situation. If we start speaking on the cube and have some sort of verbal recognition inside the cube, it will start reacting. It will start showing us what's actually going on the verbal grammar side. You see, you are not just talking, you are not just speaking, you are encoding and decoding your message. Okay? Pretty wild idea, but when I first discovered it, I liked it very much. I don't know how I use it. And this is where the idea of a grammar dog came to me, because what actually happens in our lessons, in the whole global industry of teaching, why students hate grammar so much, is because the grammar is being taught as already killed, dissected into pieces, and dead. And each grammar book is in fact a grammar anatomy. When you learn it by dead pieces. And of course, nobody likes this kind of stuff, and this is why students, as I believe, don't like it. But once you start teaching the students with this sort of grammar tools, like when students see grammar not as separate dead pieces, but as alive and kicking grammar dog, yes, it becomes like the whole new story. And in my lessons, I never have a single student who would be ever bored with it. Just as I said, because it becomes alive and kicking. So as part of speaking about methodology of teaching with the grammar cube, before this coronavirus story, I was developing as a hardware product too. And I developed a number of activities with it. And I will try to share it right now with you. So you can play it and watch how it works in class. Okay, this one. And this one too. Let me answer the questions at the end of this session. Okay, I see your questions. I will get to you. Sorry. Okay, I will watch it together with you. Just make sure that we. This is my daughter. She's acting as a student and showing how to use it. If you play it with the sound, it will become more easier for you to understand. So practically, a student recognizes parts of the text and shows parts of the speech on the cube. Okay. Well, this is what's actually going on. Having some interest from students who are trying to develop it as a product, but we agreed that we will not be talking about commercial side of it. It's purely academic session. And here you can see these two websites where all those free resources are available for anyone for free. Number one, the first website is well, it's better, it's nicer looking, but I don't use it for practical teaching. Number one is less fancy looking, but this is actually the one that I use for my everyday teaching. This is also the web link to the group in our Facebook. And practically this is it. If you have any questions, I'm ready to answer whatever you have in your mind, dear colleagues. Thank you for your attention. I will stop sharing to get your input. So I probably have to answer the questions. I'm sorry if I will not see something. Okay. Anna Solodovnikova, when you show the cube to this first time, your students, aren't they scared of such a big amount of? Yes, definitely. And this is why I actually never show them the cube if they are at the beginning or maybe even lower intermediate level. Definitely they're getting scared. And this is why I developed those simplified 2D tables with limited access for the students, where I can physically switch off what they do not need. But as soon as we progress to the higher levels, this is where they are becoming less scared. And if I feel appropriate, I get them to the cube. Of course, cube needs to be, well, you have to adjust students to this concept. It's definitely hard to process if you see it for the first time, even for professionals, not to say about the students. The next step is to invent a concept for other parts of speech. Yes, somebody is very sharp here. Yes, you're absolutely right. Definitely there. Speaking about development, this is the whole new brand of a linguistic science, which I called the modeling of grammar structure by polytopes, geometric figures, and definitely not a grammar, not only verbal parts, but other parts of speech can be modeled too. But first of all, it's rather difficult. When I tried to model other languages like German or even Russian, for example, Russian, it was such a scary monster that started to appear that I got really, I started I stopped it because it was too complicated and too scary, geometrical monster, as I said. So uh, uh, English grammar in this way is just the most useful, most necessary part. This is what actually what I needed, and I built it. If somebody would build the other versions, well, okay. What else? Wonderful. Well, practice it. Better. Colleagues, yes, definitely. These are resources for everyone to use. If you will have any feedback, this is why actually I try to spread it as much as possible. I need your feedback, and this project needs whatever difficulties that you have, because yes, it works for me, but I'm interested in spreading it and making it like a available technology for everybody else. Do you work with it? Yes, I've been working it with online whiteboard. We have been practicing it when I did the pilot in school, as I said before Corona. We used in online whiteboard, interactive board. The only problem was that more than half of interactive boards that I saw in practical real schools, they were either not connected to the internet at all, or they were somehow not adjusted from technical parts. For example, if you push into one side of the cube, actually it understands that your finger is somewhere else, and it needs technical adjustment. I saw very few interactive whiteboards which were, well, technically okay to use this grammar cube. In theory, yes, it works. In practice, as I said, most of the interactive whiteboards that I saw were not okay, and this is why there were some difficulties. How do you produce the cube for all the classes? Offline cubes, we planned uh, to get some sort of crowdfunding, but since this coronavirus outbreak, it had to postpone it. If and when there will be interest from your community, I will be very much happy to hear about that. Please write to administrators, and I'm definitely interested in teachers who would like to have these kind of cubes. I have it, like, you see, this one. This is which one we have been filming, and together with that cube, there are also some interactive tables like that. This one, but this is another story. If in case of interest, we can do this a separate webinar session on that. And yes, because we are trying to build the team of students, maybe teachers, who are interested to have the hardware grammar cube, and maybe we will build a team, a community, and crowdfund and produce, because we have already established connection with Chinese manufacturer, but as I said, Corona and everything. Cannot be on the advanced level. Well, the girl in the video is my daughter. She speaks English more or less well, and I taught her using exactly these resources and this grammar cube. But as I said, the whole technology which I built around these tools, it's rather bigger than just the instruments. It's just a professional instrument, but there are materials around that, and this is another story which is not possible to disclose in 1 hour. Not less for making up sentences. I'm not quite understand which are not less important for make. I cannot understand. Dorina, can you rebuild your? I don't understand. Can we print it to create Israel? I have. Can we print? I have the printout sketches, which can be printed out, glued together. As I said, in case of your interest, you can address these questions to the administrators, and I will email you these A4 printouts. But in my experience, when I tried to hand out all those resources, very few people could actually achieve the result because it needs some practice and skills. But as I said, well, I'm ready to share. Can we have the printable? Yes, as I said, we can do that. From your, what kind of tool find this keeps useful in my experience? Ruin the understanding. Yeah, that's a very good observation. I do have more and more students with a more reflexive way of thinking. This is why I can say that I do not teach children, definitely not, and this technology is not suitable for students less than 10 years old. I would say 12 years old is more appropriate. And my audience is mostly grown-ups with a technical background. This is where it works the best. Maybe students from technical universities, this is more appropriate. School children, yeah, that's another story, because more and more students, I mean like children, they somehow do not have well enough developed ability to think logically, which is very sad, but yeah, that's true. And in this way, the cube can be considered from one side as the way to build that ability of logical thinking. On the other side, if it doesn't work, it doesn't. But I have no idea how can even those students or people exist in the world, but I do have students who say things like, for example, teacher Nick, we are sick and tired of learning irregular verbs. Let's dump it. Let's study English and not study irregular verbs. And I said, sorry, I have no idea how to do that. It's not my way. It's like, I don't know even how to command that. So yeah, Toliko, yes, this is growing part of population which do not use their brain. They just somehow live and die on reflexes. I have no idea how it's possible, but yes, it is. Is it only about grammar form? Yes, it's about grammar forms. But as I said, there are materials which are built around it. Is it a kind of useful cheat sheet? Definitely, yes, it's a cheat sheets. And as I said, we have it in paper, we have it online. But the goal of those cheat sheets is to build the logical chains in the heads of our students, to make them think, not just reflex on the language. I'm interested in collaborating. Thank you very much, Alicia. I will be happy. You can write to administrators, and we will definitely can interact with it. Please subscribe to my Facebook page. Maybe you can write directly to me. In my website, there is an email on that. Do you mainly focus on teaching grammar? Practically, yes, but it's only on verbal grammar, and it's only on practically applicable verbal grammar. Because when students start building practical skills in this level, as you may guess, their level of precision, grammar precision in speaking, is uncomparable to anybody else, because they never have problems with passing tests, exams, whatever. And they're speaking as, in many cases, they even say that, hey, Nick, you know, we started to speak and think much more precisely in our native Russian language. And most of them tell it to me like that, because learning English is not possible without relearning and making deeper understanding of your native language. And this is things, they are related. So in many cases, these are mutually two-way road, bothly beneficial. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, dear colleagues. Could we try next with the cube now? I'm not sure what exactly, because as I said, the cube is a tool, and as our colleagues correctly noticed that using this tool is justified only when student already achieved a certain level of language and grammar skill. Before that, it is just a tool. But I would say that when we have it in class, in many cases, it works like just something like a globe in the language, in the lesson of a geography. You don't need it like every day and every hour, but by simple presence of this teaching aid in class, well, it helps because it works as the tool to concentrate and organize the whole bunch of knowledge in the student's head. Okay, adults need logical approach. Yes, as I said, children. I don't teach children. Sorry, if someone can, I can't. And I said, my audience is 10, 12, and older. Thank you very much. What kind of skills communicate? Using grammar cube. Mostly we use like communication speaking, but there are exercises and activities in writing, as you saw in the YouTube video that the girl she is working with the text, extrapolating and showing those parts on the cube. So it's like a two-way road can be working. Okay. So I hope I answered all those questions, and that's it. Thank you very much.